as a way to get political cover for firing the small number of U.S. attorneys the White House actually wanted to get rid of. Many have speculated that Mr. Rove's goal in proposing the U.S. attorney firings was to pressure and intimidate U.S. Attorney and Special Counsel Patrick Fitzgerald. When Mr. Rove made the suggestion to fire the U.S. attorneys, he had already been before the grand jury several times in the Scooter Libby case. To your knowledge, is that account correct?
I did not have. I'm sorry. Could you repeat the question again?
Sure. That when Mr. Rove made the suggestion to fire the U.S. attorneys, he had already been before the grand jury several times in the Scooter Libby matter.
I don't know the exact time, and I did not have direct involvement in terms of those personnel matters regarding the U.S. attorneys. It was not something that boiled up while I was press secretary. It happened after I'd already left.
So are you aware of any conversations involving Karl Rove or anyone else at the White House during the leak investigation in which Mr. Rove or anyone else at the White House discussed having Mr. Fitzgerald removed as U.S. Attorney or
No,
Special Counsel?
I'm not familiar with those conversations.
So to the best of your knowledge, those matters were not discussed during the leak investigation?
I just don't know. It's not something I was involved in.
Okay. In 2003, President Bush said that anyone who leaked classified information in the Plame case would be dismissed. And in June 2004, when President Bush was asked whether he stood by his promise to fire whoever was found to have leaked Valerie Plame's name, Mr. Bush reiterated his promise and said yes. However, in July 2005, President Bush said, "If someone committed a crime, they will no longer work in my administration." Do you know what prompted President Bush to raise the bar in July of 2005?
Well, it was revelations regarding Karl Rove's involvement in revealing her identity to Matt Cooper, as well as being a confirming source for Robert Novak as well. And I think that's why the president changed the threshold there.
Who do you think in the administration should have been fired if Bush had adhered to his initial promise?
Well, if he had adhered to his word, then Karl Rove would have no longer been in the administration. I think he should have stood by his word.
Okay. Do you believe that Mr. Libby was involved in getting you to vouch for him in the press?
Yes, I do.
Can you please explain why?
Well, as I recount in the book as well, I talk about the conversation I had with Scooter Libby midweek, where I told him that I wasn't going to go down a list of White House names now that a formal investigation had been launched and we were aware of it. He expressed his appreciation but didn't say much else. And then it was that Saturday, just a few days later, when Andy Card contacted me saying that Vice President and President had talked and wanted me to basically exonerate Scooter Libby, give the same assurances I had for him that I did for Karl Rove. And so I'm sure that Scooter Libby was involved in talking with the Vice President about that. It also later became revealed in public documents that he had written out some talking points for me to use to that effect prior to that. So now I never saw those talking points till it came out in the media.
Okay. Last topic of inquiry for me. You write in the book, the campaign to sell the war didn't begin in earnest until the fall of 2002. But as I would later come to learn, President Bush had decided to confront the Iraqi regime several months earlier. Cheney, Rumsfeld, Wolfowitz all saw September 11th as an opportunity to go after Saddam Hussein, take out his regime, eliminate a threat, make the Middle East more secure, and Bush agreed. When exactly did President Bush decide that the U.S. would wage a preemptive war in Iraq?
Well, he's someone that tends to govern from the gut or instinctive decisions, and he confirmed to Bob Woodward that he had asked Secretary Rumsfeld to update the war plans for Iraq in late November. He had conversations with Tommy Franks, General Tommy Franks, in December about Iraq. And so it was in that November, December, January period when he had essentially set the course that either we're going to go in with military action or Saddam Hussein will have to come clean. There was no flexibility in that approach. So he'd essentially set the policy in place at that period in time. The president is someone I know very well, and he tends to make the policy decision and then expect everybody to work on implementing that decision. And the marketing of the campaign was part of that effort.
And why do you believe that President Bush was fixated specifically on invading Iraq?
Well, I think his driving motivation, and this is something I would come to learn more when I became press secretary, that the driving motivation was this idealistic and ambitious vision that he could transform the Middle East by coercively going into Iraq, and that Iraq would be the linchpin for transforming the rest of the Middle East into a democratic region.
Great. Thank you. I have no further questions. I yield back the balance of my time.
Daryl,